Here is Pasco County Sheriff Chris Nacco walking into the room momentarily. And there's Sheriff Nacco. Let's listen in.
Good. Everybody good? Ready to roll? Good morning. So I want to start off saying how proud I am of this organization. The fact that, we have built a culture that if there's something wrong, somebody will come forward with that information, or will stop it, as soon as it's going on, or stopping the progress of it happening. And in today's world, that's good to have people that are morally and ethically strong. They're not going to blow away in the wind and go with whatever way things are going. They're going to stand firm and have a backbone and say, this is wrong, I'm going to stop it. And that's exactly what happened. So Jennifer Lewis was a member of the Pasco Sheriff's Office from January 2016 to March of 2021. She was a child protective investigator, and her role is to protect children, like all of them. And that's probably one of the toughest roles in our organization, is what those women and men do in there, day in and day out, protecting those kids. And, major part of our job is to go out there and interview. To make sure, you are that decision. To make sure you go to a judge and say, the kid's safe, or to say the kid's not safe and we have to do something about it. That is absolutely critical. Jennifer Lewis failed in those responsibilities. On several occasions, she was out there and she had a trainee with her. And while she was out with the trainee, she was doing what was her role and responsibility. But what she was putting in a report was not accurate to what actually happened. And on 2 occasions, she said she actually met with people when she didn't. And so the trainee, about a month later, in March, started looking at those reports that Jennifer had written. And while she was reviewing them, she said, we were at this house, but we didn't talk to anybody. And on another occasion, they were at the house, but the CPI investigator, Jennifer Lewis, just put her card there. She didn't speak to anybody. But what she put in those reports reflected that she actually spoke to people, which is a lie. The trainee came forward and said to her supervisors, there's a problem here. This does not match up to what happened. And so that led to an investigation of major crimes. It followed the proper chain of command. That's how things are supposed to work. When something happens, supervisors get information, they forward a potential a crime occurred, they forward to major crimes. The leadership in our CPI, Child Protective Investigation Unit, did the exact thing they were supposed to do. They forward to major crimes. Major crimes started confronting Jennifer Lewis, started just questioning her about these things. She resigned very quickly. She turned in her paperwork, she resigned. But that does not stop what we do as a sheriff's office. There was a potential crime that occurred, so we investigated. Our major crimes looked into it. They did what was right. As they were looking into it, they started working with the state attorney's office, with Bruce Bartlett's office, and making sure that, everything was done properly, everybody's rights were upheld. It came to a conclusion that 2 felony charges for falsifying and altering DCF reports were filed. So now Jennifer Lewis is charged with 2 felony counts. But the story does not stop there for us. We have to go back and we have to make sure that everything is done properly. So our child protective investigators went back and reviewed the current cases that Jennifer Lewis are working. There was 27 of them. They went back and reviewed all 27 cases. They didn't find any discrepancies, anybody being harmed. Well, not say discrepancies. Let me go back to take that back. There were some discrepancies that they were still reviewing. But as to people being harmed or anybody in danger, there was nobody being harmed or in danger. There was 27 cases. They then went back and did another step, and they reviewed 62 previous cases, and to make sure that nobody was in harm's way, that everybody was safe, and everybody was safe. So a couple of things I want to point out there. We go through training through Georgetown. It's called active bystandership. Active bystandership in law enforcement. That's a training where it encourages people to stand up and say something if there's something wrong. To come forward and be able to say, hey, look, there's something wrong. I'm morally called upon to say something about it. And not to say this training is what helped this trainee, but at the same time, those are the things that we do as an organization going forward. The other one is, you know, and it's not because of this case, we were already planning to do certain things, but we're piloting the body-worn cameras with our child protective investigators. You know, the same way, you know, we were the first, I think, in Tampa Bay to have body-worn cameras. You know, it's been almost 6 years now. And it's that open, you know, that partnership with our community that they recognize if we're wrong, we're wrong. If we're right, we're right. But it allows everybody to see what is going on. And so that's the one thing with the CPIs is that we started that body-worn camera because unfortunately, you know, people do make false allegations against our CPIs. And so we want to make sure they are protected the same way our citizens are protected and the same way we handle this Jennifer Lewis case. You know, we do have a quality assurance team. And it's interesting because one of the questions that could come up is, you know, why didn't quality assurance catch this? And they probably would have. They would have. But they go back every quarter and review the previous quarters to go back to see if there was any discrepancies, any issues. Well, you know, by the time the trainee got it to us so quickly, our quality assurance team wasn't able to go back because we had got it basically firsthand very quickly, that information. So we do have a quality assurance team that is in place. You know, those are the type of things I want to make sure that people are aware of, is that along the way there are catch programs. There's a safety net there. And the thing was, it didn't get in the safety net because the trainee came forward right away. So I go back and I applaud our child protective investigators. I applaud the culture we've built in the Pasco Sheriff's Office, is that the trainee had the courage to come forward and say there's a problem here. You know, that is a great thing. Somebody knew. Somebody who probably, you know, just finding their way, finding out where the exit door is, you know, is now, you know, able to stand up and say, there's a problem here. You know, to have that courage, I applaud that that culture is in place. I applaud that trainee for doing what she did. You know, at the same time, I encourage everybody in this organization, anywhere, if there's any problems, any concerns, you come forward. And then I applaud our leadership, because they did what was expected of them. They notified major crimes. Major crimes gets involved when they believe a potential crime was involved. And then from there, major crimes goes to the state attorney's office after their investigation and works with Bruce Bartlett's office. So the process worked. Unfortunately, we have people that are human beings, and they fault. But we can't fault when it comes to children. We can't fault when it comes to protecting our community. We can make honest mistakes, but you can't do things purposely that could put people in harm's way. And that's one thing this Pasco Sheriff's Office will not stand for. So is that, are there any questions, any concerns, anything I can answer?
Sheriff, when was she taken into custody, and is she still in custody?
She was taken into custody the other afternoon, I think it was Friday afternoon, but I'll let Detective Harris.
So the culmination of the investigations, as the sheriff referred to, there was 2 warrants that were issued. She was contacted and turned herself in. That was on, I believe, Saturday? Friday afternoon. And so obviously you know, she's going through the court process now as far as dealing with the warrants.
Any indications of why she did this? Did she give any explanation?
No, no.
And Sheriff, you indicated that she had been with the Sheriff's Office for more than 5 years. Is there any indication that there was a pattern of behavior? Because this, you know, I mean, this was reported because she was working with someone. Yeah. How many times was she working by herself? And
that's the thing. That's why we went back to previous cases. That's why you go back, you know, not just the 27 she had been working, but you went back to 62 previously. So we were going back following to see if there's any patterns there. And you know, there was nothing that showed up in those cases. You know, they went back and they interviewed people, said, hey, she said she talked to you. Did she talk to you? So those are those type of things. Now, there was other cases that we're still looking at and still reviewing to see if there's criminal allegations involved, but we wanted to make sure, the first priority is to make sure that she didn't say that, no, I didn't check on these kids and they're okay, but meanwhile they are in harm's way. There was no situations that we found in such way. So, but what we want to do is make sure that, you know, going back to the previous ones to see if there was any patterns, but there was nothing there that showed anything that, you know, anybody's in harm's way. They go back to, there were other cases that we have to keep reviewing to see if the state wants to prosecute on. But the biggest thing was we had to make sure there was no children that were being harmed that we could have saved, but there's no indications there were.
Do you think this sends a strong message to other members that, you know, you're not going to put up with this?
I think consistently since May of 2011, we've sent that strong message that, you know, we will not tolerate those, you know, that commit a crime, that we will hold people accountable. We will hold ourselves accountable more than the community. And it doesn't matter how much people come after us. It doesn't matter how many times those individuals will say anything about this organization. You know, the thing is, we document it. We have things that, you know, we held up on. And as, you know, I go back to it, I'm very proud of this organization. We have, you know, said that we will be moral and ethically correct in all that we do. And I say this, we're human beings. None of us walk on water. We make mistakes. But at the same time is, if you do something that harms this community, we're not going to stand up for that. That's not the respect our citizens, deserve. That's not what they get. At the same time, they have to have the trust at 2 o'clock in the morning when we knock on that door, we're there for a righteous reason. They have to understand that we are there to protect and serve them. And I go back to it. For the past several years, we've been through a lot. At the same time, we've held up because we had that backbone. We've done what was right. And no matter what was criticized about us, the courts have shown we are correct in everything that we do.
There have been some high-profile cases where children have fallen through the cracks in other places and bad things happen. Is that kind of the ultimate fear? It may seem simple of what she did, but is that what the real worry is, that a child could fall through the cracks and bad things could happen?
Yeah, so, every life, means something. Every life has meaning to it. And so that the biggest fear is that's why we went back to check those investigations, because God forbid there was one that she said she knocked on the door and that child's being harmed. God forbid something happened to one of those kids because she didn't do what was right. So that's why we wanted to go back, because every life does matter, and especially those kids. There's kids that, many of us have been blessed to live in great families, have parents, grandparents, guardians that stand over us and protect us. There are some children that are born in horrific situations, and they're surviving on their own at 5 years old. We wanted to make sure that if we ever got caught out those situations, that 5-year-old little kid is going to be safe because the Pasco Sheriff's Office is there. And that's why we went back to review those cases, because those CPIs, Child Protective Investigators, do not get enough credit for what they do. Day in and day out, they protect those kids. There's nobody else to protect them but them, the guardian ad litems, those individuals that will stand up for them. And so that's why we want to make sure that those kids were being protected. And if Jennifer Lewis wasn't going to do it, the rest of the CPI, Child Protective Investigation Unit, was going to go back, follow back to make sure that all those kids are safe.
And you said all CPIs are going to have cameras?
We're testing them right now. We're going through the process. There's 49 out there. We're testing them right now with the Child Protective Investigators. As long as the testing, everything goes through, we'll have body-worn cameras on the street.
Sheriff, I've covered a lot of stories about these CPIs having a really, really big workload and caseload. Is it possible that she was overworked?
People can say they were overworked, but at the same time, as you handle every case, you take one case at a time. And if you are overworked, you can't handle it, you go back to your supervisor and say, hey, I could not get to these cases because I'm handling this one case. It's very intensive. Let me handle this one case. That's in our organization, whether it be in the law enforcement bureau, no matter what bureau you're in, if you're overworked, you say, hey, this is really important. It's taking a lot more time. I can't get to these. Don't just, pencil whip something and say, I went there, or leave a card and say I spoke to somebody, because your workload's so high. That's the last thing I would expect you or any citizen to ever say. If God forbid one of these kids were hurt, we said, oh, well, their workload was too high, so that child got hurt. We're never going to allow that to happen. We don't want that to happen. We hope this sends a message to everybody to realize if you can't get to that case, we'll get somebody else there. But the cases that you're on, handle them correctly, handle them thoroughly, because that child deserves it.
You mentioned leaving the business card rather than speaking to someone. Do you know if she was supposed to speak to a parent that day, the child? I'm just looking for...
I'm not sure if she, at that point if she was supposed to speak to the child or speak to a parent, but when we went back and did interviews and they saw video, she just drops a card off but then writes in a report that she spoke to somebody.
Sheriff, you mentioned these are felony charges. Will her mugshot be available?
No, she's a former member, so protected. Yeah, it's protected under state statute.
No, you just had a 2019 that you released her mugshot, so I just.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Okay. These things happen.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Appreciate it, everybody. Thank you very much.
Pasco County Sheriff Chris Nacco announcing the arrest of former Child Protective Investigator, former CPI Jennifer Lewis. Here with you live, folks, on WFLA now, as we have the detectives and investigators and the Pasco County Sheriff's Office team now leaving the media room where the press conference was just conducted. And I was noting in our comment section as well about an odd detail about this story as we show you now a live look of the Tampa skyline, or I think our downtown tower. Yeah, this is Tampa, of course. And the odd detail was what our reporter in the room, WFLA's Chip Osowski, asked about there at the end, that the mugshot has been redacted. So the reason being is that, and that was the answer that you got there at the end, that there is a Florida statute that protects. We'll have to, of course, we'll do a little bit more homework on that as well. But for people asking for the mugshot, wanting to see the mugshot for the arrest on the charge of falsifying reports, that according to NACO, and according to the public information team there at the Pasco County Sheriff's Office, is protected under Florida statute. We might have more on that coming up tonight on WFLA and WFLA.com, the WFLA app. JB Biunno here with you live on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. I say that a lot, on WFLA Now. And we're going to kind of go over this story. But we've launched a poll on Facebook, and I'm going to launch the same poll on YouTube. Hey, and YouTube, I'm going to stay a little bit live with you on this live stream to talk about moderation, YouTube mods. We're going to talk about that. That's overdue, an overdue conversation. So we're going to stay a little bit longer on YouTube than we are on Facebook for this stream. We got to get to the subject matter at hand. We have to talk about the arrest, but we're going to be talking about the moderation issue that we're currently having on YouTube Live. It's not a problem that exists on every social media platform, but it certainly does exist on YouTube Live. So what I'd like to do is create the same poll on YouTube as we have on Facebook. And it's, it's a simple poll. Do you think it's a good idea for CPIs, Child Protective Investigators, to wear body cameras? Now, Child Protective Investigators they're walking into people's homes. They are interviewing, they're interviewing parents. They're interviewing guardians. They are constantly, of course, always checking up on situations involving children that require a Child Protective Investigator's attention. And so I want to ask our Facebook Live audience, I want to ask our YouTube Live audience to vote in our poll if they feel comfortable to do so. Do you think that CPIs should wear body cameras? Is it a good idea? Body cameras in Florida are being worn by deputies, police officers, and a lot of the incidents that we have had in recent years have been caught on camera. That camera video then becomes public record. In this case, could it have been used to get a more accurate description as to what was going on with Jennifer Lewis, a 5-year veteran of Pasco County as a child protective investigator? We're going to kind of go over the details here, and we'll come back to our poll results in just a moment on Facebook and on YouTube. So, Pasco County Sheriff Chris NACO, starting with it's basically a message of if you see something, say something. If something is out of place, something is wrong, in their office, they want the appropriate channels to be pursued. They want there to be accountability, responsibility for every employee's actions with the Pasco County Sheriff's Office. Of course, an admirable statement. And this is a case where we had a trainee report inconsistencies with paperwork versus what was actually happening in the field to the supervisor or to the manager or the management system in the Pasco County Sheriff's Office above Jennifer Lewis. Jennifer Lewis, 2016 to 2021 is her tenure with the Pasco County Sheriff's Office. She resigned after, of course, these allegations came to light. Sheriff Chris NACO saying that it is her job as a CPI to protect children, to conduct interviews, to visit these homes and get an accurate description as to what is going on in these homes and determine whether or not kids are safe or not safe. And she was out with a trainee, and apparently there were two instances that he highlighted that I have in my notes here. Two instances that he said that it wasn't accurate, that the trainee said that what was in the paperwork was not an accurate reflection of what happened on visits to two respective homes. On one, she said that she met with people at that home, and she didn't. These are allegations. These are charges that are now filed. I have to remind folks, innocent until proven guilty, but these are the allegations that she went to a home, said to have spoke with people. The actual documents, the reports that she filed in the aftermath of this visit said that she went there and talked to those in the home, when the trainee said, no, that's not true. Another separate incident saying that went there and interacted with people, but just left a business card, for the Child Protective Investigations Unit in Pasco County. So in the words of Pasco County Sheriff Chris NACO, she lied and then she resigned. And she is now facing 2 felony counts. And this created a backlog of work for the Pasco County Sheriff's Office, because now they have to go back and they have to do work on the other 27 cases or 26 cases or 25 cases, however many cases that she was on, in addition to those I just described. They have to go back and go through all of these to ensure that there are no inconsistencies and the children that are in these homes are safe. So it's not just the arrest, it's not just the subsequent resignation by Jennifer Lewis, it's then having to now double down or double back and go through all of these homes to ensure that these kids are safe and that they are in safe homes and safe environments and that everything is being reported accurately that's going on in these homes. So very, of course, it's a troubling arrest, and we will, of course, stay with it on whether or not she what the legal process means for her now going forward. If it's going to reach a court of law, we'll of course stay with you, and our coverage will be on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. All right, let's get back to some of our poll results. Some people saying that they didn't see the poll. Polls work better on Facebook. Our Facebook audience saying, some of them saying, I didn't see the poll. Our Facebook poll system, and Facebook's poll system, I should say, works better when we have a poll at the beginning of the live stream. I kind of built that poll in mid live stream, so sometimes it doesn't go out to everybody, but let's see how many votes we got in the Facebook poll first. We've got about 300 votes, and we asked, do you think it's a good idea for child protective investigators to wear body cameras? And this is an overwhelming yes. I was curious as to how this was going to go, because you got to think about it now from a parent or a guardian standpoint. You know, these CPIs going into homes, you know, for them to be wearing cameras, that of course that's you're going into people's homes wearing cameras. That's going to give that's a new wrinkle as far as child protective investigations and child protective services. So I didn't know how this poll was going to go. I knew it was going to be favoring yes, but this is an overwhelming yes. 95% saying yes, and 5% saying no. Let's check on YouTube. It's the exact same thing on YouTube. Let's end the poll on YouTube. And I think it's 94% on YouTube. Yeah, and about 5 to 6% no. We had 600 votes in our YouTube poll. So yeah, you know, it'll be interesting to follow what's happening in Pasco County with body cameras on child protective investigators. That was an interesting development and that's why sheriffs and law enforcement officials taking questions at the end of press conferences is so important, because you can ask these questions about what we can do to improve the system and make things better so that we don't have to deal with future arrests like these. Now, would a body camera, if Jennifer Lewis was wearing a body camera, does this still happen? That's, of course, a question that we could go back and forth with. I don't think we have enough details about those instances, but I think that a body camera and everything being on display as far as your workload and your Monday to Friday 9 to 5, so to speak, is you know, when it's being documented, of course, that's very much on the mind of the person wearing that body camera. Would it have made a difference in this case? You can't really say. But let me go back, because I'm going to stop myself for a second. Monday to Friday 9 to 5. There have been so many stories across the country about CPIs and child protective services and child protective investigators and various departments across the country being overwhelmed and overloaded with work, and trying to go into these homes and trying to communicate with these parents, these guardians, these individuals that are looking out for children and keeping kids safe in these homes across the country. We have heard stories for years now, of there being just these case files that are so long, and the quantity of these case files is overwhelming. And that's why I was really happy to hear one of the reporters in the room ask about that. It is a problem. I think Sheriff Nocco said, even if that is a problem, this shouldn't have happened. Under no circumstance should these incidents have been allowed to happen, or should they have happened at all. But it has to be noted, I say Monday to Friday 9 to 5. I don't know if it's Monday to Friday 9 to 5. I don't know if child protective investigators are working just 40 hours a week. It's a grueling, difficult, exhausting job. And from everything that we have heard and all the reporting that I have done in years past, going back to previous states, even before the state of Florida, that CPI work is tough and it's grueling and it feels never ending. It feels like an avalanche of work coming at you from all angles at all times. So that is I think, part of the equation to mention that and make sure that that is understood. But at the same time, Sheriff Nocco saying that this behavior and these actions, if they prove to be true, and if these allegations are true, they cannot be allowed to happen. And that's why we have the arrest of the 5-year veteran of Pasco County in the Child Protective Investigative Unit, Jennifer Lewis. Again, 5-year veteran being arrested on 2 felony counts of falsifying reports. All right, folks, we're going to get going here on WFLA now, except for YouTube. I'm going to stay a little bit live a little bit longer on YouTube. I want to talk to our YouTube audience about moderation. So for our Facebook audience, where we're signing off for now, the latest on WFLA.com, the latest on the WFLA app. We'll have more there as the day develops and as our reporter, Chip Osowski, gathers more details on this story. It'll be available to you on WFLA News Channel 8, your NBC station in the Tampa Bay area, in our newscast tonight on WFLA, and then, of course, subsequently on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. We have more stories there as well, including a gasoline theft ring that has been busted in the Tampa Bay area. With gas prices going up, there was a gas theft ring that was just busted. We have details on that story as well. And we're going to come back on YouTube in just a moment here on WFLA Now. To our Facebook audience, the latest on WFLA.com, the WFLA app.